Welcome to Postscript. I'm Tori, and I usually prepare and guide each episode, but today we have a very special bonus collaboration crossover episode for you that David and I recorded with Clark Coffey and Colin McPhader of the Soldiers of Cinema podcast. So just a quick intro from me, and then you'll hear that conversation. Clark and Colin are both filmmakers, and they're from two different generations, so they bring some really interesting perspectives. They cover a really wide variety of movies. They have great taste, and they're way better at releasing episodes quickly than we are. So it's a really great option. While you're waiting for me to get my shit together and release a new episode, I encourage you to go check them out. You can find the Soldiers of Cinema podcast on any podcast platform or at clarkcoffey.com. The link is in the show notes, as well as links to their social media. As you'll hear in a second, we decided to talk about Basic Instinct from 1992, directed by Paul Verhoeven. And this episode was so special that even David knew what movie we were going to talk about in advance. We had a really fun time discussing this wonderful and ridiculous film with them, and we hope you enjoy listening. Here's our conversation.
What's your new book about?
A detective. He falls for the wrong woman.
What happens?
She kills him.
All right, so Basic Instinct. This was my pick for this episode, and again, slightly different, or maybe very different from the other ones that we've done. We have a pretty wide gamut of movies at this point. We've done
Well, haven't we done? Didn't we
mix.
do RoboCop?
We did, yes, yeah.
Okay,
I think
so
RoboCop
this
is slightly less erotic than Basic Instinct. Maybe.
Well, it depends on where you get your kicks, but I think this is our second Verhoeven film.
Yes.
Okay, so since it's your pick, Colin, we're going to go around, but you're going to get to do the honors first. We always like to kind of give a little bit of a background on what our personal experiences with the film are. When we first saw the film, did you see it on release? Did you see it later? So, Colin, why don't you take it away with your
Sure.
personal experience with Basic Instinct?
Yeah, well, I did not see it on release. I would have been -6, which, they probably wouldn't have let me in the theater at that point. But I did, I think the first time I saw this was maybe first year university or something like that, like right after I graduated high school. And I remember being very, very, just sucked. I've always loved Verhoeven, so I've always thought that he's like such a interesting and like bizarre in a sense director, and but also very approachable to the mainstream. Like I think a lot of people know his movies if they don't necessarily know him by name, which I always find very fascinating. Like directors who have a very distinct style and who are not afraid to push the format but still can find their niche of like mainstream popularity. And I remember seeing this, and I think like the night after I watched it alone, I went over to two friends' house, and I was like, you have to watch Basic Instinct. And I think everyone had kind of heard of it and knew about it at the time. It wasn't like a unknown movie.
Okay, I want to break in just real quick for a second.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to know what was the spark that I got to watch Basic Instinct, right? Because you weren't even alive. You were 6 years yet to be born when the film was released theatrically. So it's not of your era. So I'm curious, like what had you heard about it that made you want to watch it? Was there anything you remember?
I think it was just having seen like RoboCop and Star. I remember when I was young, like when I was probably in 4th or 5th grade, I was really into Starship Troopers because there was a game, like a computer game, of like bug killer
of that property?
Starship Troopers. Okay. That was and that was very popular on like YouTube at the time and things like that. And so I'd always been into Starship Troopers, and I think from there I watched RoboCop, and then just years later was kind of like, oh, it's the same guy, so I'll check this out. And then the actual, the element of the movie, it's I've said this before. I think I said this when we've done De Palma, but I always find it really fascinating to think about, and I said this in our Frenzy episode, or Hitchcock Frenzy episode. I find it very fascinating to think Hitchcock is one of my favorite filmmakers, and I always think it's fascinating to imagine what like Hitchcock would have been doing had he lived 30 more years. Because at the end of his career, with Frenzy especially, you get into this very kind of like, he's still kind of pushing the envelope. He's still kind of getting into that like a little bit exploitation,
Mhm.
like just this really interesting
Sensationalized.
exactly.
Yeah, like,
And
yep.
so you see a lot of him kind of continue in De Palma, but I also think there's like a little
Yeah.
bit of that in Verhoeven, especially in this movie,
Yeah.
where you have this hyper erotic, like thriller, but you're also, it makes you as an audience kind of question, like you almost, it does such a good job of putting you in Michael Douglas's shoes in this movie, of being like,
Mm,
who is, even though it sort of seems really obvious in hindsight about who is the killer.
mm.
You still, it is an interesting movie because it does sort of convince you to like question yourself, and I always like that in a movie, when you're kind of having a conversation with yourself throughout. And I think that was the thing that brought me, like, kind of really enthralled me about the movie. And so I went over to two friends' house, like the night after I watched it for the first time, and then showed them it. But I was doing like a live commentary of it because I think I'd had a few drinks, and I was like, and like even just the opening
I'd love to
score,
hear that.
like the opening title, with Jerry Goldsmith's soundtrack, which I think is
Yeah.
fantastic. I was like,
Yeah.
the music's sexy. It's like asking you what's, like, it's mysterious. It's bringing it's, and like just everything about this movie so perfectly fits within
Wait. How old are
the
you at this point? How old are you at this point?
19
When you're
maybe.
so I just want everybody listening, just imagine Cullen at 19. I mean, this is, to me, this is just like the absolute epitome of, like young budding cinephile, right? You've just seen Basic Instinct, you've had a few drinks, and you're giving you've only seen it once just recently, and here you are doing a live commentary track for your friends. I think
Mhm.
that's beautiful. I think
Yeah.
that's beautiful.
So that's like my strongest memory of sort of the first few times I'd seen this movie, at least.
Perfect.
And then I do, like, I really do enjoy the movie. It's maybe I now see a few more of its flaws in,
Hmm.
10 years later, but I
We'll get
still,
to
like,
'em.
every time I watch this, I do, like, there's just something about the way that Verhoeven directs that kind of, you forget about a lot of the things that are, otherwise might be more glaringly flawed about a movie. He just kind of like keeps it rolling, but not in like a hyper speed, fast paced kind of way, but more in a like, there's just a sheen on his movies that he somehow imbues,
Yeah.
that really, I think, fills in a lot of the blanks that otherwise would be kind of like, oh, that's like whatever, plot hole, or something like that. So
Confidence counts for a lot.
yes,
And I think
exactly.
he brings it.
Mhm.
Tori, what would you like share with us your first personal experience with Basic Instinct, whether that was just now for this or years ago?
Sure. Uh, yeah, I also didn't see it in the cinema because I would have been 2 years old, or yeah. um, but I think I saw it for the first time probably about like 10 years ago. And similarly, I'd seen a couple other Verhoeven movies. I'd seen RoboCop, which I love,
Hmm.
and Total Recall, I think by that point. And I would say I've I mean, it's extremely enjoyable to watch, like no question about it. I would say I probably got more out of it in terms of like the camp value. Um, and
That's fair.
yeah, and but I will say rewatching it for this and like giving it a chance to have a more, to take it a little more seriously this time. I think I found it to be, it does reward a more serious viewing where I'm
Yeah.
not just like talking over it and like, kind of making comments and stuff like that like I would normally watch it for. It was a little less of a party viewing this time, and I just kind of, like soberly focused on it as a piece of art. And I think I got a lot more out of it on that, from that lens this time. So I think,
Interesting.
it works on multiple levels, and that's part of probably Verhoeven's overall charm, is that he is kind of, I mean, RoboCop is a great example because it is satirical, and it's kind of like, it is deep, but it's also just like a completely crazy action movie. And it has both that lowbrow and highbrow, uh, at the same time. So I think that's part of what's so great about him.
Yeah, can I add a note there? Because
Yeah.
like that's my that I totally agree with you that like the movie definitely, or like pretty much like any Verhoeven movie has like some campy qualities, but I think what makes it work is that I'm pretty sure he's aware of it. Like like I think Verhoeven knows exactly what he's doing, and he's not trying to do something super realistic, or he's not trying to do something, like he's purposefully like trying to create movies that are super entertaining and they're capable to become big hits, but also they have like quite like they have also like satirical elements like Starship Troopers or RoboCop.
Yeah, they have that kind of meta element to them always where
Yeah.
it's like a genre, but it's aware of its genre and it's commenting on the genre, but it's also exploiting at the same time. And there's just many levels going on.
Yeah, and I find him really fascinating too because it's never like done in a cynical way. Like he almost always has kind of great reverence for these genres and the like subject matter that he's approaching. And obviously with Starship Troopers, he's making fun of the source material, or at least making a very very
Right.
blatant satire of it. But he does it in a way that is still, he's like pulling all these things out that he appreciates about it, even if they are simply just like a very shallow elements of these satires, and then is making something that like fits within those genres at the end of the day very well, because he understands the subject so well, so he's able to, like, despite satirizing all these things, still kind of make like these seminal pieces of those genres at the end of the day too, which is really
Yeah,
interesting.
exactly.
We will get into that more, but David, I want to hear about your personal experience with the
Yeah,
film.
sure. So, well, I think one very important detail here is that I was born in Eastern Europe, behind the Iron Curtain. So I remember I was in elementary school when this movie came out, and I remember when this movie came out because it was a very big hit in Hungary as well. And I remember just looking at a cinema magazine in Hungary where I was growing up, and yeah, it really caught my attention as an elementary school kid that they used a direct quote from the movie that they created a movie about the fuck of the century.
I told her I thought it was the fuck of the century.
And and I was like, wow, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, I mean, as an elementary school kid, yeah, of course.
Yeah. but and I actually I've seen the movie, just a few years later. I was still a very like young kid, but I've seen a lot of I've seen a lot of like quite serious movies. My parents weren't really like they actually like watched the movies with us as kids, and we were talking about them. So like like I don't have any like traumas, but I've seen adult content like a lot when I was a little kid. But something that also makes it kind of interesting to approach it from my actual perspective is that in Hungary they dub movies. So the first few times I've watched this movie, it was the Hungarian dub version, and even though it's a like it's kind of an interesting discussion, like about like when you're watching a movie, like should you watch it with subtitles or dubbed, and like obviously there's like pros and cons for both treatments, but something that makes subtitles a lot more reliable is because dubbing is very very easy to mess up and just ruin the quality of the movie. But something, and that's why I wanted to highlight this very important detail that was happening in Hungary, is that they took the translation of a movie just as seriously like it's a classic play by Chekhov or Duramat. And so like even if it was Weekend at Bernie's, like it's still treated very very carefully, and they made an incredibly well detailed translation of that. And after that, like when the translation was ready, they were choosing voice actors from the Hungarian movie and theater scene. So very often you watch something like Look Who's Talking, but the actual like caliber of actors who are providing the voices are like the equivalent of Dustin Hoffman or or like
I love
Anthony
that.
Hopkins, and you know, like and sometimes you know, like the translators, you know, like even like improve the script a little bit when it's, you know, like when it's not a very high quality movie. So I just wanted to take a note there that, you know, like I watched this movie in my own language, but actually they treated it as a masterpiece, because seriously, like whatever they were, you know, like it didn't matter if they're translating and dubbing Space Odyssey or if they're like translating, yeah, like Look Who's Talking. Like they, all movies got the exact same treatment, and they took it super seriously. And I remember when I watched a Michael Douglas movie for the first time, and I was only familiar with the Hungarian actor's voice whenever I was watching Michael Douglas. And then I realized that there's this super masculine guy who's like, you know, like seduces, you know, like women like Kathleen Turner, and has a voice like this. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, it was really strange to me, because I really like, my direct association like vocally for Michael Douglas was a lot more, you know, like masculine and a little like deeper and raspier voice. And the first time when I heard like, seriously, this person like seduced Kathleen Turner multiple times, like that's a little strange. But yeah, so like yeah, but I did watch it as a kid, and yeah, I watched it when I was very young and in this very particular Eastern European situation when everything was translated, and the voice acting was provided by local actors, but really high caliber actors actually.
That's brilliant. I love that. I love the idea of every movie getting the same treatment by these, you know, highly respected, trained actors. And yeah, Look Who's Talking. That's
Yeah.
another movie for another day. So
Definitely.
So, alrighty. Well, we'll round it out with, I think I'm the only one of us who was kind of maybe old enough to remember when this film was originally theatrically released. I did not see it at the theater at that time either, but I would have been, I think, a sophomore in high school. I was 16 when this film was released in 92. So it was, I didn't see it in the theater, but it was like a cultural phenomenon. I mean, I do very much remember that everybody was parodying it. You know, it was like, I'm sure they had like skits on SNL, and, you know, it seemed to be all over the place.
Seinfeld does it.
Yeah. It was everywhere, to the point where, you know, certainly it was a commercial success. I mean, I think it grossed like 350-ish million or something worldwide. It was a major, but it wasn't even remotely close to the biggest box office of that year, not even close. But its cultural impact was like, I felt like almost so outsized. I really remember this being in just the zeitgeist, you know. But then truthfully, I wish I had like a great, the first time I saw it story, but I'm sure it was probably like, you know, a few years later, I saw it on HBO or something like this, you know, and I don't really have any strong recollection of the film at all. I don't think it had a big impact on me one way or the other. I just, yeah, I've got really no memory of it. And then the most recent viewing before preparation for this recording, I mean, maybe I saw it when it came out on DVD or something, you know, in the early 2000s. But I don't even really have much of a recollection of that, honestly. So I don't think this film really had a substantial impact on me one way or the other. I think, Tori, I kind of lean a little bit more towards your orientation to the film, where it's kind of its camp value is maybe was what I was initially really kind of recognizing about the film. So, but then watching it again for this recording, and I watched it a couple different times. You know, it's interesting. I'm a big fan of noir cinema, and this film obviously kind of is sort of ish in that neo-noir realm. And And so I really did want to try to lean into that side of it. I really wanted to give it a serious look, and I think there are a lot of really good things going on in this film. From the score to the direction, I think some performances are really great. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff going on here. The cinematography, Jean de Bont, is outstanding. There are so many things that are great about this film. But I do have to admit that I'm kind of going back and forth as I'm watching the film between, okay, this is like some serious noir. This is, to like, okay, wow, they've taken, noir was a genre of film where, I mean, I feel like for me, that so much is subtext in a noir film. I mean, I feel like it's almost one of the defining aspects. People often talk about high contrast cinematography and yada, yada. But I feel like for me, it's subtext is what's one of the greatest tools of a noir film in that genre. And this film has almost no subtext. Everything that would be subtext in a noir film is stated explicitly, both literally and figuratively stated explicitly.
I love it. She's got $100 million. She fucks fighters and rock and roll stars, and she's got a degree in screwing with people's heads.
And it's like everything every character is thinking. It is like, boom, we're going to show it and we're going to say it. Like there is just nothing about this film that is, that is subtext. And so it is hard. And Cullen, you mentioned, or I think maybe, it was just you called it like a sheen, but I would maybe call it a confidence. I mean, there's clearly technical, not competence, expert. I mean, just highest level of technical competence in this film. And certainly Verhoeven is confident in his direction, and the performances are confident. Obviously, especially Stone's performance is extremely confident. But it's just the combination of the writing and also the subject matter, the explicitness of so much of this, the fact that there's almost no subtext, that everything is said just right on the nose. It's hard. I mean, there are moments where you're just like, wow. So now having said all that, I think it gives us a lot of fun things to talk about, and it is a fun film to see. And I think because you can enjoy it on multiple levels. But at the end of the day, it's hard, not to think, okay, is this a little more like RoboCop or is this a little more like Showgirls? Like, and it lands somewhere, in between, right? But a lot of fun things to talk about. But I think that was one of my biggest. I kept thinking, noir film. Okay, there's so many elements that it wants to be a noir film, but then wow, it is something different. It's its own thing, and I'm not quite sure what it is. But maybe we'll find out a little more as we discuss it.
Yeah, I can definitely jump off that. Like, you mentioning how explicit everything in it is. At the same time, I do find the overall meaning of the movie to be still sort of ambiguous.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Like there are sort of mixed messages I find in it in terms of like who our sympathies really lie with, whose side we're on, if like who's redeemable or not. And I think that is partially by design. Like I don't think it's meant to have you take a side, but it is bringing up so many pretty heavy topics and just kind of not just the meaning at the end in terms of like what we're actually supposed to take away from who did what and all that, but or like what might happen next, but just just overall like the character of Catherine and the character of Nick, I still don't really know who's the more empathetic character or not, or if either is, or if we should even know by the end.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Honestly, in the only character I really felt any warmth or empathy for, honestly, it was Gus.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
And Beth too. Beth as well. The psychologist.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I mean, I feel like these characters are all broken in their own ways, and And I think that's where I kind of, okay, this great noir setup, right? Where of course you have kind of this mystery, this cop thing going on in a city, and it's not Los Angeles, it's San Francisco. So I almost feel like, it's kind of, there were so many like cop films being, in San Francisco in this setting. And so I don't know, it brings like some interesting history with it too, with its setting and cinematography. But yeah, and so you've got all these like horrible, compromised, ethically, morally compromised characters, which is such a trope from the noir genre. And so you're totally right. You're watching this and you're like, okay, wow. I mean, Nick is obviously not a good dude, right, as a character.
Right.
But it's interesting. But then you almost are like, you appreciate Catherine's, Stone's character, because she's clearly competent. She's intelligent.
There's no smoking in this building, Miss Trammell.
What are you gonna do? Charge me with smoking?
She's she's super polished, and she's manipulating these people, and so you kind of have like a little bit of respect for her, and she's very direct. She's very, she's commanding. She's just making rooms full of men just lose their composure and drool on themselves, and so there's this power there that is appreciable, but does it go all the way to empathy? Is interesting. So yeah, there's not a lot of characters. Yeah,
it's interesting too, because it kind of touches on sort of like you were saying, Tori, but like it touches on all these different little themes. So it kind of becomes a bit difficult to know, okay, which one is it trying to drive home? Like even when Nick is brought in and interrogated in the exact same room in the exact same fashion that Catherine was, and he's repeating her dialogue almost verbatim, like it's almost the exact same beats.
There's no smoking in this building, Detective.
What are you gonna do? Charge me with smoking?
And it's kind of, or not even kind of, I think it's doing a pretty, on the nose commentary about like just gender roles in cinema at that point, and like, okay, how are they responding to this man versus how do they respond to the woman? How do the woman that use what is, seen as a typical, like very, gendered approach to like seduction and things like that in her scene versus what is he doing? He's kind of being this like standoffish macho kind of figure, and so you almost expect the film to go further in that direction at that point, that like, now, okay, is he starting to be treated in the same way that she is he going to be seen as sort of like and objectified in the same way that she is? But it doesn't really get that far. Like it doesn't really carry that on afterwards. It doesn't in some elements, but like, yeah, it is interesting how many little points it touches on. And maybe the idea is to make sort of a little bit more of a mosaic of all of these themes and elements, and just kind of have you blur them all together in your head and come out of it with like, okay, I generally understand what that was about. But and again too, like this movie starring essentially two characters that are difficult to be empathetic for, and it really kind of hits you over the head constantly with how bad, for lack of a better term, and unempathetic these characters are, and yet again you kind of like, this is what I mean when I say this sort of like Hitchcockian kind of thing, where it's like you do sort of want, like in a weird subconscious sense, it's like watching a bank robbery in a movie and you're like, oh, I hope they get away. Like you kind of do want both of them to win or both of them to succeed, just because of like the they do impress upon you, and it's that sort of thing where I think maybe that was Verhoeven's point, is like making an audience kind of feel a little bit filthy at the end of it, or rooting for these characters who are not good people, and sort of making them question, okay, like, why am I able to, I see myself as a moral person, why do I want this person to succeed or fail, or why am I rooting for these characters that don't really have much to root for in a moral sense. And so I think maybe that's it. Maybe it's like a challenge to an audience to think about, like, okay, what is my take on this, and why am I feeling this way?
Yeah, and something that makes that situation even more complicated is that the ending of the movie is not, it's kind of open. Like there are like two possible interpretations of the movie, and as you mentioned, that like you felt most empathetic towards Beth's character, and like if we accept that reading of the movie that she was innocent, then she's by far the most likable character in the entire story. But also the movie like leaves the door open to the idea that like maybe she did all of this, and then like that goes in the other way around. And actually that's something I really appreciate about like, even though it's not totally clear to me about, like, I more like I have questions about the ending, and I would like to hear you guys' opinion about it. But there's something very smart detail in the script, is that there's a scene when Nick's character just appears in Beth's apartment, and they just casually mention that something is wrong with her lock. And when they find evidence against Beth at the end of the movie, like one of the key evidence is that they found the revolver in her apartment, but it's been like told us earlier in the movie that that's an apartment that's very, very easy to break into.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious, to hear about your interpretations, because my interpretation of the ending, and I totally agree that it's meant to be vague, but at least what I come out of the movie thinking, especially because of that last scene where she reaches for the ice pick and then doesn't, is that she, like, her whole Catherine's whole, like, what gets her off is this power dynamic and being that smartest person, most intelligent person. And so when Nick says, okay, let's have kids,
raise rugrats, live happily ever after,
that shatters that for her. And that's when she starts reaching for the ice pick, because she's like, this is not going to be, this is no longer getting me off. And then when he immediately relinquishes, and he's like, actually, no, it's fine. We don't need to do that.
I hate rugrats.
Fuck like Minx, forget the rugrats, and live happily ever after.
She lets go of it. So my interpretation of the ending is, like, because they kind of say that point twice about her, it's when he is first in Beth's apartment and he says, you should change your locks. And then when he leaves, he actually mentions it again. He's like, make sure you get these locks fixed. So to me, I'm like, that's them bookending that scene to make sure we remember that line. And then even the line about, the answering machine is like, doesn't have any message from Gus to bring her to the building. My interpretation there, she's been erased, and the books are in the. So it's like I think that the movie is intentional, but I think that that's also the point of the ending, is to make people have these conversations. It has this element of like walking out of the theater and having two people with the different takeaways. So that's why I'm curious to know what everyone else's takeaway is. Like, do you think that could be Beth? And I think that's also why I, as you said, David, like, why I see Beth as empathetic, because like my takeaway is that she didn't do it, but and if she didn't do it, she's like, there's no question about it that she's the only good person in this story.
Wait, Gus is okay, right? Isn't Gus okay? I don't know, maybe
Gus
Gus. I'm with you on Gus.
Definitely.
I mean,
he does drink and drive, but
I just want to say it's first, there's a couple things that I don't know, this just endeared him to me. I mean, he's always calling everybody Hoss. Or actually, not everybody. He's always calling Nick Hoss, which I just think is funny.
What you doing, Hoss?
And then we find him in that country western bar in San Francisco. So I'm like, I don't know how in the world he found this country western bar in San Francisco, but I don't know. He's like this little buoyant character in this film that I think helps keep it from just falling all the way off the cliff of like, wow, every character in this film is just, not a good person, but he's just like this little buoyant thing, I feel like, that helps kind of keep the whole film just like above that like point of no return for me.
I'm totally with you on Gus, because he's like he's so good he's such a good friend because he's constantly like checking in with Nick and being like, are you sure you want to do that? Maybe that's not a good idea, but he never like oversteps the boundary. Like, I would say Beth does kind of overstep the boundary a few times. And there's just some moments like when he just shows up at Nick's apartment with a pizza. I don't know if you got that. I was like, wow, what a good buddy, you know?
Totally. He's like always happy. Like everything is like going on around us in this film, right? And of course, we never know what's going on in Gus's life. The film never takes us anywhere in Gus's life. But he's so buoyant and happy, right? Doesn't he always seem? And so like when he's murdered at the end, I feel like that's like the one actual murder where you're like, I care about this. It's like the one time you actually care. But let me go back I'll give my interpretation real quick of the ending. So I think where I kind of fall is that, you know, Sharon Stone's character, Catherine, is such a manipulator. And we have this history, right, of like all of these people, like there's that older woman, I forget, Hazel something, right? Who murdered her whole family, and she's hanging around in Catherine's life.
Roxy as well.
You've got Roxy. And so I think there's multiple. I think my interpretation is that there are multiple people killing multiple people here in this, and that, but the core of it is Catherine, and I think she's manipulated people to kill, like just for the fun of it. Like she's just sociopathic, and she's like manipulating people around her throughout her entire life to do these things, and so. I don't know if she's ever been like the hand on the ice pick, maybe, but I think like she's kind of manipulated people.
Thought you didn't have any cigarettes.
Oh, I found some in my pocket. Would you like one?
I told you I quit.
It won't last.
It's almost like this Charles Manson kind of thing, you know, where she's almost got her like. So that's my interpretation. That
Even
there's
Nick,
actually
she kind of manipulates Nick to kill.
Oh,
Beth in a
kind
sense,
of,
right? Yeah, literally.
Yeah, I mean, no, of course. Well, she sets all that up. I mean, you could totally read it that she has set all this up. She set all the dominoes up for everything. And so, right, like Nick kills Beth. Catherine's not there. She doesn't pull the trigger, but she's set all these pieces in motion, and we get hints that, you know, she's been looking at Nick. She set that target out a long time ago. Right? A long time ago. Don't we find out that Nick's file's been bought by her like a long time ago, way before they ever meet. And so I think the film kind of gives us these hints that you could interpret that she's been planning this out for a long time. And so I had no problem kind of just going right all the way then and being like, yeah, she's manipulated all these people. But and then they still they're like this codependent relationship. Like she's manipulated them, they've killed these people, and now there's this codependent relationship, like almost kind of like this Manson thing, you know. It's like so I don't know. That was my interpretation for what it's worth.
Well, this is great because I'm going to take the complete opposite point of view, so we can really flush this out. But I also agree with. I think everyone here agrees that it's intentionally ambiguous at the end.
For sure.
Okay. Like, because especially since like he fades out and then fades back in, right? That's something. Okay. I was like, that wasn't a problem with my video, right? That was actually happening.
The projectionist walked by.
Yeah. But I think that was part of what I kind of, I guess, set out to do on this viewing, was like try to see it from a different angle that's maybe a little less like what I may be primed to see it as watching it as this kind of like culty, campy film. And I think like we're all, as you said, like the noir genre tropes, we're all so primed to see these women as femme fatales. And
totally.
Yeah, to see her that way, and like to take any mysterious woman and just project onto her like all these nefarious tendencies and manipulative, you know, like cold things. So I was trying to actively in this viewing think of her as like, okay, what if she's totally innocent? Or like innocent. I mean, some of the things like you said, she did like get his file and stuff like that, but like otherwise, like, you know, a sympathetic character, if nothing else.
She's just an author.
Yeah, she's just an author. But I was like, okay, so her parents died when she was very young, and she is coping. Oh, and then also this man that she loved died, not the one that, you know, from the beginning, but this for the previous guy. And she says she did love him and that she was hurt by his death because she loved him.
How'd you feel when he died?
I loved him. It hurt.
And I'm like, okay, so maybe she is like coping with all of that by being someone who exerts a lot of control on her surroundings. She is very cold and very distant in her relationships. And then when that's threatened by the potential of like an actual attachment with someone that she actually loves and cares about, and she says like a bunch of times that she's afraid that everyone that she cares about dies.
Everybody that I care about dies.
Which is true. Because also the two people that she becomes, the guy she was fucking and then the friend, well, and also the girl she was fucking, who are her friends, right. I would say. Anyway, she does say they're her friends. Like they also die. So I think she's, she rationally believes that everyone that she loves dies. And then she's like threatened by this potential attachment. And so she may be just trying to, have some power and control over the situation and sort of push him away and keep him at a distance by playing these games with him. So that's also a possibility. And then at the end, there's also a reading, and maybe this is a stretch, but I'm going for it anyway, that she's considering getting the ice pick because if she knows if she threatens him with the ice pick, maybe that will drive him away, and maybe she would feel safer if she just could get him out of her life. And then, he can't die, basically. She feels like if she gets close to him, he's going to die. So, I don't know. I kind of like, because she really, as she starts to feel more attached to Nick, she really does try to become more of a vulnerable, open character. And, especially when Roxy dies, you could see that as her being further manipulative and crying and all that. But, maybe she's actually just crying, and maybe she's like, maybe she's actually just this very broken person who's had a lot of trauma, and she's just trying to like work through her trauma. So I'm not at all saying that that's like the reading we should have, but I think it's there, and it's interesting. Like when I actually watched it that way, I was like, actually it's there. And actually then I feel pretty bad for her that just because she's this like mysterious woman with a lot of like control and a ton of power. I mean, she has power on many, many levels, that everyone around her and everywhere she goes, they're all projecting onto her these different ideas, like really bad, evil ideas onto her. And maybe she is innocent of all of them.
Yeah. And actually,
I love that take. I love it.
I think that the like what you said, where it's like maybe it's not correct, but I think that that's to me the point of the movie is that like you come out of it, and even though like my interpretation is one thing, I like there's no part of me that's like that's the correct interpretation or that's what Verhoeven's trying to say. Like I look at that interpretation that you just laid out, I think like also subconsciously kind of is always in the back of your mind while you watch the movie, until like the only point that kind of it switches for me is seeing the ice pick at the end. But that's a really interesting read on that, which is just, like what if she is now trying to present as this character that she has been cast as by everybody around her, to either like as a means of escape, or as a means of just like submission to that role that she does kind of relish in, this like this power and this kind of exerting fear, especially sexually. And so I think that's really an interesting read, and that fade out too. Like I think that you briefly mentioned the fade out. I don't know exactly what Verhoeven's trying to say with that, and I don't know if that is like I have ideas. I have like interpretations of why it fades out and fades back in. Is it because of the line, like happily ever after, and there's their happily ever after, and then here's their not so happily ever after? Is it because I don't know. It's a really, but I think that that's the point, is that like, again, it generates these conversations. Did Beth shoot her husband? Possibly. Are these a series of coincidences where it's like, like none of these characters are good? Maybe Beth did kill her husband, but also wasn't obsessed with Catherine. Maybe she was. There's all these really interesting angles to it that I think do genuinely like, and I think again, Verhoeven is intentionally making this movie super campy and like it's very clearly the
I've always been on the line with that. I have to
Yeah.
admit, I'm not sure. I go back and forth. I vacillate. It's like, is Verhoeven like, is he 100% like really in command and really in charge of this camp, or does the camp sometimes overtake him, and then after the fact he claims credit? Because again, I have to put this in the context of all of his other films, and some work extremely well. Some kind of land somewhere in the middle, which I think this film does. And then I think some, like Showgirls, I feel like that film really did get away from him personally. So I think sometimes, my personal opinion is that sometimes he's in command of that, and sometimes it gets away from him. But that's my own personal take. David, did we get your take on just kind of like the plot? Who's the bad guy? Who's the good guy? Is anybody good? Is everybody bad? Did we get yours?
All I wanted to add to this is that actually I love that, but that there is an example of both interpretation. Like, as I understood, like Tori is like more open to the idea that Catherine might be innocent. But
I was trying it on.
No, but
I liked it.
But the whole point is that, and yeah, like my attitude towards the movie was like exactly accepting it and appreciating the fact that there's no hard evidence against anyone. Even the ice pick on the floor is just like, we've seen them like making drinks, and she loves to use that tool for like breaking ice. So those tools are just around constantly in the movie in everybody's apartment, and also again, like there's that thing with the revolver that it's not hard evidence because it was easy to break into that apartment. And also, I just like something I noticed that kind of like earlier at the movie, there's this character, Dr. Lamont, who's like basically like tells, kind of like lays out the two interpretations, the two potential interpretations of the ending quite early on in the movie. Because, like if it's done by the writer, like in that case, like he says that, then
you're dealing with a devious, diabolical mind.
Psychotic, obsessive behavior. Like that's how he describes the person who would do this murder, who's also the writer. And they ask them like, okay, what if it's not the writer? And then he also like gives a description of that person as like a
deep-seated obsessional hatred and an utter lack of respect for human life.
And that's so basically he gives a possible type of personalities for both cases. And I love that we can't be 100% sure who did it. Like if you're focused on some details, then it feels like Catherine did it, but it's pretty easy to imagine that Bath did it, and everything else that we see as evidence is just a coincidence, and it's so to me, so I'm definitely not voting on anyone, because that's exactly what I appreciate about the ending of the movie, that it could be either. And I even appreciate that whole idea actually has been introduced pretty early on with this with this psychiatrist like Dr. Lamont, who just like lays down the two possible characters that we're dealing with.
Well, there's a ton of like visual cues on that too. Throughout the whole, like the first shot is the mirror, and it's like you can look at that as like a voyeuristic kind of element of like, yes, watching yourself, have sex is very voyeuristic, but also there's two sides of this like sexual interaction. It's like, it could be two people, it could be two, and like even the that opening scene, I think the hair is intentionally done to sort of look like a wig in a sense. So it's like it could be like if you go back and watch that,
and it completely occludes the face.
And it does it appears very similar to the wig that when Gus is stabbed. Like there is this kind of back and forth where I think 100%. A lot of these clues are very intentionally.
But of course, Catherine has that hair, and Roxy has that hair, so all of it is You know, of course, we have like the Hitchcockian blonde, that whole kind of connection. Okay, I got to get a couple things out here, or I'm going to explode. Okay,
Go for it.
Yeah.
First is really small, but I'm curious if this stood out to anybody else. It becomes a major plot point. It stood out so much to me. I laughed out loud when I saw this prop multiple times highlighted in the film, the Bart Simpson keychain. You have this totally serious, right? I mean, this film is a lot of things, but there's one thing I feel like you can't question. This film is taking itself seriously, right? I mean, I get the sense that this film is taking itself seriously. This is like, the film is serious. But then all of a sudden, it's like, you've got these super serious characters. There's like the and everything is like melodramatic, over the top serious. And then it's like, here's my Bart Simpson keychain. And then it becomes like and look, I get it. They needed it to stand out because, right, it becomes, it has to be memorable because Chekhov's gun, like, this is going to come back. And it is meaningful because Beth has it in her pocket and she's, Nick thinks she's pulling a gun, but it's the keychain. And I'm just like, okay, what was the decision-making process for this it's like over-the-top film that's taking itself so seriously, and it's Bart Simpson keychain? I need people's thoughts on this.
Well, for the listeners, just so you know, when Bart Simpson keychain was mentioned, I pointed at my Simpsons tattoo. So I take the Simpsons very seriously.
Okay.
But I also think that the film, I don't know if the Bart Simpson keychain really lends itself to this, but I also do think the film takes itself seriously, but I think Verhoeven is very aware of the cheese too, and I think he's taking the cheesiness of it seriously. It's like a brie cheese. It's like a nice,
Okay.
But I think that it is I think very self-aware in its like presentation of a lot of these themes, and it is like there is an element of satire to it too. I think of like, yes, it's taking this noir genre which is usually filled with subtext, but it's pushing all that subtext. It's like, what if it was like a maximalist noir movie, and it's like all of these subtle looks that would be in like a Humphrey Bogart film, where it's just like, that is the sex scene, is like Humphrey Bogart looking at someone a certain way.
That's the whole.
We're just going full out. It's like all the stops are pulled. So I think that I think it is self-aware in that sense.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I would like to add a little piece of information to the previous subject. I'm sorry if it's like going to make the editing annoying, but I just wanted to highlight one more thing about the ending of the movie and about the theories about who actually did it, and something that I have looked into on purpose, like as you were mentioning the opening scene, and as you were mentioning that somebody's clearly wearing a blonde wig. And we see both ladies, both Beth and Catherine, naked. So we kind of like have a point of reference of what their bodies look like. And so I looked at the opening scene, and that's clearly a third actress. Because I watched that scene because I was curious, like, okay, like who did they filmed that scene with, and it's a third person. It's neither of them.
It's interesting with the attention to detail, as you mentioned, like that they would miss that is a little bit weird, because the two actresses' bodies look similar to each other, like Beth and Catherine. Their bodies look similar enough to each other that you could mix them up, but then the actress that they use at the beginning, she looks pretty different.
It's very interesting. It's like a Zodiac thing, right? Where it's like they cast a different person.
Exactly.
Well, could it have been Roxy? Could it have been Roxy potentially?
I don't think it was. I think like Roxy didn't have fake boobs either. So
okay,
we're looking for a lady with slightly larger fake breasts.
A wig and fake boobs. So.
But that's what I wonder.
Is that supposed to be?
But see, that's one of those things. That's one of those things. I don't mean to take the mystique, and like on the one hand, absolutely, I believe like whatever is in the frame is like supposed to be in the frame, right? Like I look at a work of art and I'm like, Whatever is there was a conscious choice for it to be there. But then I also know what it's like to make a movie. And I also know that on every day, you're having to make all these compromises. And so it could have just been like, well, of course, we're not going to have, the two main actresses be here. We're getting a body double because this is like a pickup day and yada, yada. So I also know that happens all the time, right? It's just a way to save money, or schedules didn't work, or, hey, we're not even going to see her face, so why bring in Sharon Stone or the actress that played, is it Ginny? Janine? What is it? A triple horn.
Roxy
I forget her first.
is...
Not Roxy, but the other...
yeah.
The psychiatrist.
Yeah, it's Janine Triplehorn. Yeah, Gian.
Okay, there we go. And so it could have just been a scheduling thing. So I kind of always kind of keep both of those things in mind. But that is a really interesting observation that I totally missed.
And I think that first scene is probably could be the most camp scene in the whole movie. I mean, it really starts out strong.
I mean, it's straight out of an 80s slasher film, right? I mean, it's 100% straight out of an 80s slasher film. It is meant to like titillate, and it's violence and sex like mixed up in the most graphic way you could do it in a releasable film. I mean, it totally makes me think of like Friday the 13th or any one of those films.
If someone got like, that's what we're filming today, they got the woman with the fake boobs. Like, I understand the aesthetic choice there, matching that, but they didn't maybe consider the rest of the film and the continuity there. But I don't know. Maybe we do. Maybe it is part of what we're supposed to be thinking. I don't know.
I think it is. Like, I'm gonna read maybe the optimist side, which I think is intentional. That's kind of why I brought up like Zodiac, where it's like you've got again Zodiac. Every single time you see the Zodiac killer in that movie, it's played by a different actor. The like Jake Gyllenhaal character, the real life version of him, believes in real life, if you read his book, that Arthur Lee Allen is the Zodiac killer, and Arthur Lee Allen is a prominent character in that movie, but the film never conclusively says whether he is or is not the killer. And so you leave that film having that conversation, having almost this exact conversation we're having now, which is what is so I think that it is intentional that character is a bit ambiguous, that it could be either of them. It could be Roxy, maybe
somebody
Beth.
else.
Yeah, maybe it's somebody else, but maybe Beth and Catherine were kind of in on it together the whole time to get Nick to submit, because both of them are kind of having this relationship with him, and he doesn't really commit to either of them. He's constantly like having the same conversations with both of them, but from opposite sides. And so maybe they were in cahoots. It's like there's a million different interpretations, and that's what really think is fascinating.
And I just wanted to throw this out here too before I got a little bit excited and sidetracked by Bart Simpson. Another way I think, like, because it is, as with all art, with every movie, right, you have, here's just the plot, who done it, this kind of stuff, and then we have all of the meta ways that we might interpret something. And I think it might be interesting, now Verhoeven didn't write this film. Joe Esterhazy wrote this film, and that's a whole other fun story where Joe Esterhazy was as a writer in this time period. And I mean, that guy is a character. I don't know if you've ever read his autobiography, Hollywood Animal.
Hungarian,
but I mean, that guy is that guy is a character through and through. And I mean that in all the best ways. But, that guy was riding a high that very few writers ever ride in Hollywood at this time when this film was made. And he's definitely an interesting dude. I think he even recently was on like some pretty major podcast and has done some long form interviews recently. So if you're interested in Joe Esterhazy, I think if you search out there's some interesting new contemporary interviews with him. But so I know Verhoeven didn't write it, but I know he went through a long process where they did do a lot of rewriting, but then they kind of came back to Esterhazy's original script. And so Verhoeven is definitely, obvious. And then he chose this film, right? It's another interesting way to think about, that Catherine's that Catherine's character is kind of in a way like symbolically representing Verhoeven. And you could almost, think of, because Verhoeven got a lot of flack for the explicit nature of his films, right? He's constantly put in a position to kind of defend his subject matter, defend the levels of violence in his films. His films were, at least in the United States, always censored to some degree. RoboCop was, they had to cut out violence. This film was to bring it into an R rating as opposed to an NC-17. And so there's another interpretation I find that's interesting, that this character is an artist and she's observing. She's an observer in her world, and she's observing these lives on the extreme end of a spectrum, because that's dramatic. That's what we're looking for when we're writing stories, and that's what Verhoeven is doing in his films. But yet, as the observer who's interpreting that and then kind of putting that back out into the world through like their personal lens, you can become a target yourself. Well, why did you do that? Are you twisted? Like, is your mind twisted to imagine these things, to put these things on film? What kind of person would do that? And this happens. This is constantly something that artists run into, right? That their character is judged based on the output of their artistic creativity. And so I think that could be a really interesting reading of this film, which kind of, Tori, leads more towards your interpretation from the plot perspective. But on a meta level, it could work really interestingly as well, I think.
Yeah, it also works for the first scene because, that could just be like, it almost has this like, thriller romance novel quality where it's sort of this like heightened reality that's like maybe dreamlike, and maybe that's like maybe that's Nick's vision of what happened, or like maybe that's some kind of subconscious like reenactment of what happened, as opposed to like us actually seeing what actually played out in that situation.
It even could be just the movie version of the book. Like, like we might like see that particular scene from Catherine's book and not even from real life as the opening scene.
True.
Yeah.
And maybe that ending too, that final moment of like the fade out, maybe that's what the fade out is. Maybe the fade out is we end without Catherine being the villain, but the audience is expecting her to be. So now Verhoeven has to fade back in to be like, here's your ending.
There's all these, that's a very interesting take too. And I always, I think, and then there's another level, not to get too abstract, but right, I mean, all of these stories, of course, none of these people are real. They're characters, and these characters have come from the imagination of someone or multiple people's minds. And so I always think of stories as these maps of the human psyche, right? They're projections of our own psyche. And so these characters are aspects of our psyche. And so, if let's just say that Joe Eszterhas wrote this, that these are, that Catherine is a part of his personality, that Nick is a part of his personality. And so there's, it's interesting to think about how they might represent different parts of just the human condition as a whole. And, the taboo nature of sex and power being interlinked. And, with Catherine using her, the thing that in her culture and in her time is one of the few ways that maybe she could have power. Of course, we hear that she's very rich, but maybe in the world of men and police, that money doesn't mean much, but her sexual power can be very important in that realm. But I just think it's fascinating too to kind of think about it in almost just a purely symbolic way, and how these characters can kind of represent different aspects of our human condition and psyche. Not to get too wacky, but
no, absolutely.
And I also love that, like you mentioned that, like Catherine's character like could be like interpreted as, like a version of Verhoeven's character, and it's interesting because that just reminded me of another visual detail that, like whenever you see the cover design of her books in the movie, like it's very, exactly which section of the bookstore we're talking about. Like it looks incredibly pulpy. Like,
oh god, yeah.
Like they were not trying to make her books look like that it's like any highbrow or anything like that. They look really trashy actually. And that makes that interpretation, or like that, like possible, like thing that he like, that Verhoeven like kind of like portrayed himself through her character, that just adds another layer of self-awareness, and that kind of self-awareness like comes through other elements of the film as well, just like how incredibly like overly stylized certain scenes are. Like he was not like clearly not trying to create a movie that it's super raw and realistic, but more like playing with these, you know, like playing with the colors and the lighting and like, for example, one of my favorite details about the movie is the design of the interrogation room. Like,
oh yeah,
like
Great.
anyone who ever visited any government office in the United States, you know that they're not gonna like put like a blue mood lighting there
in a concrete
like it looks like
bunker with the
it looks like a karaoke room, not like, you know, like an interrogation
No,
room.
it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful.
But it's
even
clearly
the
like
lensing,
set
it's
up
like shot
because
on anamorphic, you know.
yeah. But it's clearly done because we have that very important scene when when all these cops are just like drooling and looking at Sharon Stone's character, and so we need a very stylized, like, you know, like cool looking, interesting backdrop for that. So we can't just like, you know, like film that scene in a standard interrogation room that looks like, you know, like a school closet. So, you know, it's
I wanted
so
to
it's
add
like, you know, like
quickly,
that's
Matt,
just you know, like that's just
Yeah, it's
something
beautiful.
that kind of like makes it like, you know, like kind of makes it even more obvious that it's actually very self-aware the way this movie has been made. And I think and that's why I think Verhoeven knows exactly what he's doing, and that's why I think that, you know, like all the campiness that it's in the movie, I don't think it's accidental. I think it's, you know, I think it's there because it was his decision to make something that looks pulpy and looks stylized and kind of, you know, like looks a little trashy on purpose.
While we're on the interrogation scene,
Okay.
because can talk about one of the most famous scenes of this movie. It was just something I was thinking about while I was watching it. I was like, okay, obviously we've all heard of somebody like showing their cleavage to get either, we don't know if it's a power move that she's doing when she's flashing her vagina to the cops,
Right.
or if she's being provocative, which is also part of her entire character. Like, what is she exactly doing here? But I was just like, when is that a thing? Like, I've never heard of somebody like in no other context have I heard of something like, oh, I got out of getting a ticket from the cop by flashing my vagina
Right.
at him.
No,
It's just like height. It's bringing it to 11.
No,
right? It's
Yes,
and that's where I totally agree. I mean, and I wish that I had a stronger memory of having seen this when I was younger. But but what you're speaking to, you know, it's just really on that line, because I'm watching it and it's like so much of this, instead of being like titillating or, you know, it just comes off as like, oh my God, like this is so over the top. It is so like everything is so on the nose that that's where I'm like, it's hard for me to know. Like, I really am not sure. Like, is this just so heightened and so stylized? Is the cheese on purpose, or did they just, because I mean, that line, right? It's like you push, and then it's just a hair's breadth between it's dramatic to then it's melodramatic, you know? And like, once you're in melodramatic territory, then the cheese is abundant. And I can't tell because I think the over the top nature of these over the top scenes is so much that it is hard for me to take it seriously. Like, it, you know, as an adult now, as a 50-year-old, it's hard for me to take this seriously. And I'm not sure if it's just we're in a different time and we're looking back at a film that's, you know, whatever it is, 34 years old now. Is it part of that, or did people have that experience already, like in '92 on release, where they like? I'm curious. Well, I mean, what is your take? Did those take you out of it, or were you like really in those moments? Because for me, I was almost like laughing as opposed to being, you know, like sucked into it more. I don't know.
I wanted to make a real quick note before we get into that my favorite thing about that book prop is that when they get her book, they're like page 295. She says, like, she mentions an ice pick, but they open the cover of the book, which has like a cutout in it, and the cover page of the book literally says murdered her lover with an ice pick in bed. Like it's like on the front page. So they didn't notice that. I guess they had to go to page 295. But no,
that's hysterical. That is hysterical.
Yeah, it's just great. But to your point, Clark, funny. About the like melodrama, I think I believe that I think the melodrama is the point, and I don't know if Verhoeven would be upset at somebody laughing at this. I think it's such a heightened emotional and like sensorial experience. In its both like in its stylization, in its music, in its eroticism, like it's making the audience feel so many different things. It's kind of like a sensory overload. That I think the intention is to kind of have, whether that's like a laughing because it's so ridiculous and it's so campy, or if it's a laughter out of like discomfort, or if it's like a fear, or if it's like, the movie's not particularly scary, but there are like frightening thriller moments of it for sure. So I think it is just trying to like take everything and push it. So again, like a maximalist noir movie, like it's just trying to push you into these heightened senses of emotion. That's my
and so much
takeaway.
So much credit to Sharon Stone for pulling off some of these lines, because
can you even like, no question.
Like I like rough edges. That's one of my favorites.
You have something against ice cubes?
I like rough edges.
And she pulls it off so naturally. I'm like, anyone else doing that line, it's so camp. And come on.
Just all of it, right? I mean, and so much of her acting is through her physicality, right? I mean, she does have all these great one-liners, but I mean, it's just I think she had been in some films before this, but I think this is her breakout role. I think this is really what sent her career flying. But I think you really do get a sense of a very sharp intelligence. She conveys that, I think, not just confidence, but her own innate intelligence as a human being, I think really does actually come through all of this film and is really important to the success of this character. And it does really pivot on a fine point, I think. And she nails it.
Yeah. And just as a side note, like this is something I also like noticed that, like even during the movie credits, like they started with Michael Douglas and the second person mentioned is Sharon Stone. And I remember that, like in Europe, this movie was definitely marketed as a Sharon Stone movie with Michael Douglas and not a Michael Douglas movie with Sharon Stone.
Wow.
Like the whole way, the way it was advertised, as I remember when I was a kid, it was all about Sharon Stone and Michael Douglas was with her. But, but if I look at the trailer, if I look at the US trailer, or if I look at the opening credits, they started with Michael Douglas and Sharon Stone comes second.
Yeah, no,
I think he was paid like 50 times what she was paid or something.
Oh, I'm sure of it. Do you recall had Sharon Stone as an actress had any traction before this film in Hungary? Do you remember?
She was in Total Recall, but as I understand, this is just from like reading the Wikipedia page, but like she really fought to get the part for a while. And a lot of other much bigger actresses were considered. Michael Douglas was really resistant to working with her because he felt he should work opposite someone who's also like an A-list actor. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. But I think it was Verhoeven who, if I'm not mistaken, he's the one who really pushed to have her.
Well, great job.
Yeah, because even like her role in Total Recall is like so much more silly and like
kind of
a bubbly character.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like way more minor for sure. Mm-hmm. But it's Also, it's interesting that you mentioned like the censorship, because like especially from the 90s, there were quite a few movies that like now they release a director's cut version on Blu-ray or with streaming, but it's interesting because there were quite a few movies, especially in the 80s and the 90s, where they had a slightly longer version released in Europe, even in the theaters. Like the director's, what we have now as the director's cut, that's what I've seen as an elementary school kid, and and like that. But that was the same with like other movies like Leon, or like I can't remember, but it's like kind of like a long list of movies, mostly about like nudity and like sexual content, like that was just like treated differently, because in Europe they don't have a like when something is rated R means like you're only allowed to see it if you're like above 18, and there's no additional thing that it's even higher than that with nudity and sexuality. Like there's no like X rating, or like there's no equivalent of that in Europe. Like, you know, like if you're an adult, it's either violence or nudity, but they're essentially the same. Like
I'm curious, yeah, because
so they don't have that issue that, you know, like that something could be even more serious than rated R.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
It's
definitely
interesting
in the
because like
United.
here.
Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say that like in terms of like one of the big differences between Canada and the U.S. in terms of our film ratings is that like sexual content is taken a lot less seriously here.
Mm-hmm.
Like many movies that are rated R or 18 plus in the States get like a 14A, which is basically PG-13 here for sexual content. Violence is more of the what brings it up to like an 18 plus. Whereas I think maybe it's just the cultural difference in the States. And maybe
we're cool
more
with
of
violence. That's no
a
problem.
religious, but yeah, and just like a sort of more of a religious aspect in the U.S. That kind of makes the sexual elements more of the adult themes and things like that.
Yeah, it's just funny because we're like, we're looking at like two different acts. One act is like making more people, and the other act makes less people, but somehow the act that makes more people is a lot more problematic than the act that makes less people.
Yeah, interesting. One act you hope, you know, is somebody will do. One act you really don't want people to do.
No, that's a very funny way of phrasing it. Yeah, but I think that seems to be the case, that by and large, Americans in their films are much more tolerant to violence and much less tolerant, you know, from a censorship perspective, to any kind of nudity or sexual content. And it's definitely telling, I think, about some things in American culture, for sure. Yeah. Well, I think as we kind of start to wrap up here, does anybody have any kind of like final topics that we didn't get to touch on that you really wanted to bring up and chat about here quickly?
I definitely have like a list of like similar to your Bart Simpson keychain.
Okay, yeah, I want another Bart Simpson. What? Yeah. What else do you have that falls into the Bart Simpson category?
Well, I'm wondering. Okay, sorry to single you out, Clark, but I feel like maybe as the older one, you could answer this.
Okay, bring it on.
Did people actually use ice picks at that point?
Okay, wow. So now you are really.
They didn't have ice cube trays.
So now you are really making me
edges.
Feel old.
She likes right.
So,
but so does he apparently, because he has one too.
Never in my lifetime has anybody ever used ice picks. For anything really. People used to use ice picks because before there was in-house refrigeration, you would have your ice delivered to you in a big block. Like it literally, because most people did not have freezers in their home, and literally they would use large blocks of ice in like what was effectively a large cooler, kind of shaped like a refrigerator, and that ice would keep your food cold until the next time the ice truck guy came by.
Right.
So I've
seen it in movies like from the 40s.
Yeah. So way before my time, guys. I was born in 76 and I've had a refrigerator in my house ever since I was born. So I've never seen, yes. So yes, we had indoor plumbing. Now my mother didn't. If we go back one generation from me, then you do start to get into that. But yeah,
could it be just another nod to noir though? That's,
I think
like it's a device that it's coming from that time period.
It's like the fire poker, you know, like there's like certain weapons.
It is called out in the movie too, though. Like Michael Douglas or Nick does mention like, oh, you use an ice pick, and she says, and then I think the reason he has one is sort of to entice her. Like he goes out and says, you know, I got it for
that's
$1.99
he bought
at Kmart.
it.
Kmart, $1.65.
Right? Like
he
bought
it
too.
Oh wow, yeah.
So he had
he mentions the price.
Trays, he threw them away. And he got
Wow.
Wow.
I mean,
if he wanted to, he would.
I mean, and this is clearly, I mean, it definitely, yeah, so no ice pick usage, so it definitely stands out. It's definitely interesting. But I think it is, you hinted on, or you touched on this about, he went out and actually purchased this ice pick. And you can see that this character is definitely kind of like moth to the flame kind of thing, right? I mean, we know about his history with drinking and drug use and killing people, maybe some on accident, maybe some not. I think somewhere, we hear a lot about how he accidentally killed some tourists, and they mentioned that numerous times. But then don't they also say something like you've killed people like 4 out of the last 5 years or something?
Yes.
There's some.
Six murder, like he's shot 6 people.
And so, of course, this is insane. Like, what detective would still be even worse? It's insane. But this guy's like killing people left and right. He's
Shooter.
Got this history. Yeah, they call him Shooter, for crying out loud. He's got these totally inappropriate relationships with his psychiatrist, like the internal affairs doctor that has been assigned to his case. He has an intimate relationship with, completely unprofessional. He's got a history of cocaine and alcohol use. It's like all of these things. And so he's just provoking his own demise, I think. Like, it's just, he wants the danger and the thrill of, I went out and I purchased your favorite murder weapon. Here it is right now. Come help me use it,
Yeah. And there's even there's that like mirror image of the two of them where she finds out that, the name I'm blanking on, the first murder that we see at the beginning of the movie, that he's dead. She
the rock
finds that
star,
out,
the rock star,
yeah. Docs or whatever his name is. He's dead, and she has almost no emotional reaction to it. She's just kind of like, oh, he was some guy. And then when Nick finds out that the like internal affairs cop that was Marty, that was like on his ass constantly, when he dies, he's like, I don't really know him well enough to say if I care that he died. He was a pain in the ass though. And so it's like they both have this kind of like lack of remorse, even though, even whether or not they killed these people, because again, it's vague. I don't, the movie doesn't really explicitly say it either way, but they don't care that they are dead either way, whether or not they did this. So there is this kind of interesting little mirror image of the two of them, that I think they both, it's like the explicit version of Phantom Thread, where they just like they're perfect for each other because they have this perfect little angle on each other where they fill in the gaps.
Since you mentioned the drug abuse, that's something I actually really appreciated about that movie. Like, just like a very like minor detail, but there's so many 80s, early 90s movies, especially like movies by Verhoeven, that are just like, they just like scream cocaine. Like, like you could just like tell that was definitely part of the creative process here. But this movie really wears this on its sleeve. Like, they actually like mention the use of cocaine during the interrogation scene. Catherine says it that she did use it during sex, and ask like Nick if he ever like
that he was using cocaine when he
has this and he was on cocaine when he was doing that like shooter thing, and like they have this scene in the club when they show Sharon Stone's character using cocaine. Like there were so many movies that were so obviously influenced by cocaine in that time period, but this movie is actually showing the use of that drug, and that's something I really appreciate about it.
This movie makes you it's the experience of being on cocaine. I think this movie is like one. It's well, and just a fun thing too. We're talking about where Nick buys the ice pick, and she's over at his apartment, and they're breaking up the ice. I mean, she even she's constantly pushing his buttons, right? And even there, she's like, oh, do you have any Coke to go with the Jack?
Do you have any Coke? I just love Coke with Jack Daniels.
Got a Pepsi in the fridge.
Oh, it's not really the same thing now, is it?
Of course.
Yeah.
We know exactly what she means, but he says, oh, no, sorry, all I've got's Pepsi. But I thought that was actually... That was actually one of the more
Yeah.
fun scenes, I thought.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
that
yeah.
club
Definitely.
scene, I love that. I love the club scene because it goes almost into like a Schumacher Batman kind of thing for a bit.
Yes!
Like when they're doing that dance and they're like punching by each other. It's like the most incredible. Like honestly, that scene of everything to me sticks out of the movie the most because it takes away this like noir kind of sheen on it and then goes into this
And the
very,
V-neck
very
sweater, the infamous
V-neck
V-neck sweater.
And that's
No,
not
I-
a complaint. I love it, but
No,
Yeah.
I think that if you take that club scene and you zoom in and make that however long, 2.5 hours long, that's Showgirls.
Good point.
yeah.
Yeah. Another like stylistic choice that I really appreciated, like like similarly to the interrogation room that looks like a karaoke room, is that like the way they portray the like Catherine's decadent lifestyle is just with this minor detail, but that she owns not only one but two Lotus Esprit sports cars. Which was the hottest car of that time period, incredibly expensive, and she has two of them, one in black, one in white, so she can wear them as an accessory, like depend on what her outfit looks like.
But let's be clear here. It's not just an accessory because she knows how to drive it, right? We have that chase scene where she's weaving in and out of traffic. She's passing on the outside of blind turns, and she causes Nick's character to have like a near accident with the bus. He actually does end up hitting that car. The stunt driver, well, I think Douglas actually does some of his own stunt driving in this film. I know that he prepared for some of it. I think he did some of the stair driving, actually, believe it or not, where the Mustang's driving up the stairs. But you can see where the car like fishtails and it hits the corner of the bus in real life. It's actually great stunt driving. That chase scene is really brilliantly filmed. But the point is, though, is that she actually knows how to drive that car to its limits. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. I mean,
but
I think they say in the film that she's like worth $100 million or something.
Is that supposed to be from her books?
No.
Did they mention that? Okay.
No, hold on.
Yeah,
Tori, if I'm remembering right, isn't it that she inherited it from
She inherited it from her parents dying.
Who died.
Yes.
So that's part of the mystique. That's part of the, did she kill them? Was she, or, I don't know, like just part
That's
of the
also
mystique
that
of,
very
like,
almost like, again, it's that hint of kind of like that Rebecca Hitchcock element of like this old money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Great film. Great flick. Well, I think, I mean, unless there's anything else anyone wants to
what do
add.
you guys have any other?
I just want to quickly mention that the score, like Jerry Goldsmith is one of my favorite composers, and I think that his music here is just so, again, so over the top, so like bombastic especially when it's
so nori, right?
When we fall down. And the difference between that opening, like those like subtle like flutes that play over that opening title sequence, which I think is just a great like opening sequence, and then but when whether it's the murder scenes or when it when we crane down to the ice pick on the floor at the end, and you've got like those loud horns, and it's like so just, again, that is melodrama to me. That's that like cheesy, it's almost what drives home the point to me that a lot of it is intentional. Like, why would you score this film like that if you didn't want people to have a smile on their faces every time one of these things happens?
Yeah, it matches the tone perfectly, and it drives the tone a lot of the time as well. So it's really perfect.
I feel like the only change that I would make to this film, let's say we were talking a little bit before we started recording about design work, and David, you have some experience in design, and Cullen, you have some experience in design. I think that on the poster where Sharon Stone is kind of like, they're kind of in an embrace. Michael Douglas is there, and she's got kind of her clawed hand, kind of on Michael Douglas's shoulder. I would have just put that Bart Simpson keychain like right.
Well, they tried to. They just couldn't get the rights. They couldn't get the rights.
Oh my god!
Is this a Fox film? Is it Fox? No, it's not. Is it? So it's they probably had to pay for the the rights to use that little keychain.
Yeah. It's true. It was distributed
Which suggests
by
that there is a
TriStar.
level of intentionality there. If they had to buy the Bart Simpson rights, that there's something to that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Alrighty. Well, hey, I don't think we could end on a better note than Bart Simpson. But Tori, David, I want to thank you guys so much for having this conversation with us about Basic Instinct, which was a fantastic choice. This has actually been a real joy. It's been really fun. I hope we get to do this again. But thank you so much.
Yeah, me
and
too.
For everybody out there listening, thank you for doing so. We'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Postscript. The music for this episode was created by my brother, Graham. If you want to reach any of us, you can email postscriptcast@gmail.com.
Postscriptcast@gmail.com.